Have you ever, like, wondered why it seems like some people just sail through life, racking up wins left and right, while others, well, they feel like they're stuck in a constant uphill battle?
Hmm.
Or, like, why one person can bounce back from a serious illness when it feels like the odds are stacked against them, while another just, I don't know, they don't. And then there's that deep, genuine happiness, that feeling of real contentment. Why do some folks just, it's like they radiate it naturally, while others are always chasing it, never quite grasping it?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, isn't it?
If those sorts of questions have ever popped into your head, well, you're in the perfect spot, because today we're diving deep into those very mysteries.
Absolutely. We're taking a journey into the inner workings of our minds, exploring that hidden landscape. And our map for this expedition, so to speak, is Joseph Murphy's The Power of Your Subconscious Mind.
Oh, yeah, classic.
A true classic. It's packed with stories, real-life examples, and a whole lot of thought-provoking ideas that point to just how much power our everyday thoughts, even the images we create in our minds, how much those actually influence the direction our lives take.
So think of us as your guides, sifting through this gold mine of a book, pulling out the most valuable nuggets and handing them right to you.
Exactly.
Our goal today is to break down Murphy's key principles, those like core ideas and those practical techniques, the stuff you can actually apply to your life. We want to give you a crystal clear, straightforward understanding of how this incredible part of you, your subconscious mind, really works, so you can have those aha moments, the ones that make things click into place and change how you see, well, everything.
Hmm.
And we want to do that without getting bogged down in a bunch of complicated jargon. So
No brain overload here.
no brain overload. Right off the bat, one of the most fascinating things Murphy presents is this idea that, like, our minds aren't just one thing, they're more like this dynamic duo, right?
Yeah.
He talks about this distinction between the conscious mind, the part of us that thinks logically, reasons things out, makes those day-to-day decisions, and then there's the subconscious mind.
Right.
And the subconscious, he says, it's way more reactive, but also incredibly influential in shaping, well, our actual lived
He
experiences.
uses this really helpful analogy to picture this, doesn't he? Like, imagine the little me, and that's our conscious mind, the one we're kind of aware of, thinking those surface thoughts, but then there's this big me operating below the surface,
Yeah.
the subconscious.
It's like the captain on a ship giving orders, right?
Yeah,
But it's the massive engine room down below that's actually driving the whole thing.
absolutely. And Murphy really dives into this idea that the subconscious, this big me, acts almost like a book of life. And everything we write in it, all those beliefs, the assumptions we hold, the thoughts that play on repeat in our minds, those end up, well, they get expressed in our external world,
That's interesting.
impacting our health, our relationships, even our finances. Basically, every thought we have, it's like a pass.
Okay.
In every situation we experience, that's the effect. Think of your subconscious not as like an enemy to conquer, but as a garden.
Ooh.
It's incredibly fertile, and it'll grow whatever seeds we plant, both the good and the bad.
So it's this constant feedback loop,
Mm-hmm.
our inner thoughts shaping our outer experiences.
Exactly.
Now, Murphy talks a lot about the power of suggestion, but what does that actually mean when we're talking about our two minds? Like, how does that play out?
Well, suggestion, the way Murphy sees it, it's simply the act of planting an idea into the mind.
Okay.
And he gives this really vivid example. Imagine you've got a passenger on a boat who's terrified of getting seasick. And then you've got this seasoned sailor who's convinced he's totally immune. Now, they're both on the same rough seas, right?
Yeah, same boat.
Same boat, same conditions. The anxious passenger, they accept this idea of seasickness, and sure enough, they get sick. But the sailor, he just brushes that suggestion off. And because of his strong belief, his conviction that he's immune, well, he's fine.
Interesting.
The big takeaway here is that the power of a suggestion doesn't come from the suggestion itself, but from how much we accept it in our minds.
Okay, so it's not just the suggestion, it's our receptivity to it, whether we buy into it or not.
Exactly. It's like our minds have this filter deciding which ideas get to take root and which ones just bounce off.
Okay, so we've got suggestion, and then there's auto-suggestion, which is like self-suggestion, right? It's the stuff we tell ourselves.
Exactly. Autosuggestion is when we deliberately and repeatedly suggest something specific to our own minds. It's that inner self-talk, the things we're constantly telling ourselves, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, it's like positive self-talk, affirmations, things like that.
Exactly. And Murphy gives this very touching story about a young singer who was incredibly talented, but she was so afraid of failing, and it kept sabotaging her performances.
Oh, I can relate to that.
Her internal dialogue, her auto-suggestions were so negative. It was like a broken record playing, what if I mess up? What if they don't like me? And her subconscious, well, it just took those suggestions as commands and manifested them as stage fright and performances that didn't reflect her actual talent.
So it's like she was accidentally programming herself to fail, almost.
In a way, yeah, it's like she was setting herself up for the very thing she was afraid of.
That's so powerful. And then Murphy contrasts that with an example of how, like, flipping that script, using positive autosuggestions can actually lead to tangible change, right?
Absolutely. He talks about this student who was really struggling to remember things, and she started using these positive affirmations, like really specific suggestions directed at her subconscious. She would say things like, I have an amazing memory, I can easily recall everything I need to know, and she'd picture herself clearly remembering information.
Okay.
And over time, her memory just drastically improved,
Wow.
showing how much power our consciously chosen self-suggestions can have. It's not just wishful thinking. It's about giving your subconscious a vivid blueprint so compelling that it can't tell the difference between that and reality, and it starts making it happen.
Okay, so we're planting those seeds, both the weeds and the flowers, and our subconscious is like diligently tending the garden, growing whatever we plant.
Exactly.
Now, one of Murphy's big points is this idea that the subconscious does not argue, which sounds pretty crucial to grasp.
Oh, it is. It is. You see, the subconscious mind, unlike our conscious mind, it doesn't debate or analyze things critically.
Right, right.
It just accepts whatever the conscious mind believes as true, without question.
Huh.
Even if that belief is totally wrong, factually inaccurate, if we buy into it, our subconscious will diligently try to bring about results that match that belief.
Okay.
Which is why just trying to be positive, forcing it often doesn't work because your subconscious is paying attention to your deeply ingrained beliefs, not just what you say on the surface.
It's like it can sense that disconnect, right?
Exactly. Like, think about how deeply ingrained those neural pathways in our brains become over time.
Mm-hmm.
The subconscious, it's resistant to those sudden shifts in thought, which is why consistency is so key when it comes to, like, rewiring those pathways, retraining your subconscious.
So it's like a long game, not a quick fix.
Exactly.
Murphy even brings up those experiments done with people under hypnosis, right?
He does. He does. There's all this research, psychological studies, that show people in a hypnotic state, they'll totally accept and act on suggestions that, in their normal waking consciousness, they know are false. Which really shows you that non-reasoning nature of the subconscious and just how much it can act on ideas it accepts as true, even if they don't make logical sense.
So our subconscious mind is like this powerful engine that doesn't question the directions we give it. It just like goes.
It's like setting the GPS coordinates, and it's off, following that path.
Okay, that makes sense. And this brings us to the idea of assumed major premises, what Murphy calls them. So can you break that down for us? What are those and why should we care?
Think of a major premise as your most fundamental belief, like a core assumption about yourself, about other people, about how the world works, that you hold as absolute truth, no questions asked.
Okay.
And Murphy's argument is that these consciously accepted premises, they're the guiding principles for your subconscious, they heavily influence its conclusions, which then affect your actions and ultimately the outcomes you experience.
So like the starting point for our subconscious, the rules of the game it plays by.
Exactly. He uses a classic logic example. Every virtue is praiseworthy. Kindness is a virtue, therefore kindness is praiseworthy. So if you truly believe that kindness is a virtue, that's your major premise, your subconscious, it'll naturally steer you towards thoughts and actions that reflect that. And you'll likely see more kindness in your life because you're tuned into it. Think of these major premises as your absolute, unquestioned beliefs about how the world works. They're like the operating system for your subconscious,
Okay.
filtering information, dictating responses.
So we want to choose those major premises carefully then, right?
Absolutely. He tells a story about a university professor who realized his recurring stomach ulcers, they were a direct result of his negative thoughts and anxieties, the stuff he was constantly dwelling on.
Oh, wow.
So he consciously created a new, positive major premise, a new operating system, and he'd repeat it to himself regularly. It was infinite intelligence guides and leads me in all my ways. Perfect health is mine, and the law of harmony operates in my mind and body. Beauty, love, peace, and abundance are mine. By holding on to this positive premise, he basically rewired his subconscious toward health and well-being, and his ulcers eventually healed.
So it's like he took control of the compass and pointed it in a new direction.
Exactly. You're consciously setting the course for your subconscious, guiding it towards the results you actually want.
Now let's talk about the inherent nature of this big me, the subconscious. Murphy says it has a lifeward tendency. What does that even mean in like real world terms?
It's a big one. Basically, Murphy believes the subconscious mind's most basic drive is toward life, preservation, healing, like it's on our side, working to keep us going and thriving. Think about all the vital functions it handles automatically: breathing, heartbeat, digestion, cell regeneration. We don't even have to think about it.
Great.
And that powerful instinct for self-preservation, that's a perfect example of this lifeward tendency.
Okay, so it's like our bodies are wired to survive and thrive, and our subconscious is like the unseen force behind that.
Exactly. It's working tirelessly behind the scenes to keep us balanced and whole.
Okay, so that's encouraging. Now, the book is full of practical techniques, actual methods for communicating with and influencing our subconscious.
Hmm.
So, where do we even begin?
Well, there are a few, but one of the foundational ones Murphy calls the passing over technique.
Okay, tell me more.
It's really about consciously formulating a clear request, a definite thought in your mind, and then mentally handing it over to your subconscious.
Okay.
Trusting it'll take that and run with it, like create a blueprint for making it happen
Right.
without you having to micromanage every detail.
It's like giving an order to like a really efficient but kind of mysterious internal delivery service.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And then there's the visualization technique, which I feel like we hear a lot about these days. How does Murphy describe it?
Visualization for Murphy, it's about creating a super vivid, detailed image in your mind of what you want, the outcome you're after. And here's the key: experiencing it as if it's already happening, like right now, in the present moment.
So it's not just daydreaming, it's more active than that, right?
Yeah, exactly. He stresses that whatever you can clearly and consistently see in your mind, it already exists in some form, in like the invisible realm of your mind.
Yeah.
And if you can hold on to that image with faith and focus, well, it has the potential to materialize in your actual physical reality. It's not passive. It's about building that mental reality so strongly that your subconscious picks it up and starts laying the groundwork to make it real.
So you're not just seeing it, you're like feeling the reality of it, already having achieved it. He also talks about the mental movie method, which sounds a bit more involved. How is that different from regular visualization?
The mental movie method takes visualization and like turns it up a notch.
Okay.
Instead of a still image, you're creating a whole movie in your mind, a mini film of the outcome you want,
Okay.
complete with actions, emotions, sounds, all those sensory details that make it come alive.
Oh, interesting.
The key here is to totally immerse yourself in this mental movie. Like you're in it, living it, feeling it as if it's already your reality. Do that over and over, and eventually your subconscious starts to accept it as a genuine impression. He gives this great example of someone who wanted to sell a property, and they just kept picturing and feeling themselves receiving that check, holding it in their hands, feeling that sense of accomplishment.
Like really living it in their minds.
Yeah, until their subconscious got the message loud and clear.
Powerful stuff. Now, he mentions the Baudouin technique, which sounds kind of interesting. What's the main idea behind that one?
This technique comes from a psychologist named Professor Charles Baudouin, and the core idea is you take your main desire, whatever it is, and condense it down to a short phrase, something easy to remember.
Okay.
Like, peace fills me now, or abundance is my reality. And then you repeat that phrase with feeling, with intention, in a relaxed state, ideally just as you're drifting off to sleep.
Okay.
The idea is that in that drowsy pre-sleep state, your conscious mind is kind of letting go, which makes it easier for the suggestion to slip past any resistance or doubt and really sink into the subconscious.
So like you're whispering your deepest desires directly to your subconscious as you fall asleep.
Exactly. It's like a direct line bypassing the gatekeeper.
Makes sense. And then there's the absolute method of prayer. How's that different from traditional prayer?
Murphy says the absolute method involves consciously aligning your thoughts and feelings with those divine qualities, those universal principles, things like bliss, love, infinite intelligence, and then focusing on the outcome you desire. But not just for yourself, you're picturing and feeling it as already achieved for someone else.
Okay.
So the focus is on embodying these positive qualities, radiating them outward, not just on your own personal need. It's a way to move beyond any feeling of lack or limitation.
Okay, so it's like shifting the energy outward almost.
Exactly.
And what about decreeing? That sounds pretty powerful, like taking charge.
Decreeing, the way Murphy describes it, it's about making these conscious affirmative declarations, but with this unwavering expectation that your subconscious will respond and make it happen. You're basically speaking your desired reality into being with total conviction.
Wow.
He tells a story about this woman who was in a tricky situation, and she kept decreeing, saying out loud, "I release," and she named the person unto God. "They are in their true place at all times. I am free, and they are free." And according to her, the situation resolved itself in this totally unexpected, harmonious way. It's about giving your subconscious a clear command, trusting in its ability to make it happen.
It's like you're not asking, you're telling.
Yeah, it's a statement, not a plea.
Okay. And lastly, Murphy's always emphasizing how important sleep is, calling it a gateway to the subconscious.
Oh, absolutely. That time right before you drift off, it's prime time for influencing the subconscious.
Really?
He's a big advocate for using that time for focused prayer, for repeating those positive affirmations or doing visualizations right before sleep. He even gives tons of examples of, scientists, inventors, writers who've gotten these breakthroughs in their dreams, which shows just how active the subconscious is even when we're sleeping. He also mentions, just in general, how important it is to get enough sleep, good quality sleep, for both our minds and bodies to function well, because a well-rested mind is way more open to positive suggestions.
Yeah.
So it's not just about winding down, it's about setting ourselves up to, program our subconscious while we sleep.
So our bedtime routine becomes a chance to shape what our subconscious works on all night long.
Exactly.
The book goes into how to apply all these principles to specific parts of our lives, and that section on health and healing, that's particularly interesting, and I know it resonates deeply with you, doesn't it?
It really does. Murphy actually mentions my personal experience of overcoming what doctors diagnosed as a sarcoma, a type of cancer.
Oh, wow.
And I did it through consistent prayer and a deep understanding of the power of the subconscious to heal. I realized that the same intelligence that created my body in the first place, it also has the power to restore it to perfect health.
Mm.
And the specific techniques I use, which are all outlined in the book, they really cultivated this unwavering trust in that innate healing power that I believe resides within all of us. And that experience really solidified my conviction in the power of the subconscious mind to heal.
That's an incredibly powerful testament to those principles.
It truly is.
He also mentions that incredible story of Madame Eyre at Lourdes.
Oh, yes.
What was so significant about that case when we're talking about healing through the subconscious?
Madame Eyre was reportedly healed of blindness at Lourdes.
Right.
And this was despite her having, documented atrophy of her optic nerves, so medically it didn't make sense. Murphy uses her case as a prime example of how strong faith can activate the subconscious mind's healing potential.
So belief as medicine almost.
Exactly. It wasn't the location itself, Lourdes, that had the power, but her absolute unwavering belief that triggered this healing within her. It underscores the idea that faith, regardless of what it's directed towards, can be a powerful catalyst for healing.
Okay. So the object of faith isn't as important as the faith itself.
Exactly.
He also tells that story about the man with tuberculosis and his son who brings him that symbolic piece of the true cross. What's the key lesson there?
Oh, that's such a powerful story. The man's son, he desperately wanted his dad to heal. So he gave him this little splinter of wood embedded in a ring, claiming it was from the actual cross.
Yeah.
From a healing shrine.
Okay.
The father, fueled by his faith in this relic and his unwavering expectation of a miracle, he held onto that ring, he prayed with everything he had, and he made a full recovery. Doctors were amazed, and the big takeaway is that it wasn't the piece of wood itself, the object, that healed him, but his belief in its power.
Right.
His imagination was ignited, he had total confidence, and that triggered his subconscious mind to respond and heal him.
So the object was like a focal point, but the real power came from his own belief.
Exactly. And throughout all these healing stories, the message that keeps coming up is that all healing, all true healing, comes from within.
Right. It's ultimately internal.
Exactly. Murphy makes it clear that all healing originates in the subconscious mind and is triggered by the individual's faith and belief, regardless of the specific method used.
Okay.
He even goes as far as saying that disease, it often starts in the mind as a negative thought pattern or emotional state before it ever shows up physically. It's all connected.
Wow, that's fascinating. So let's move on to another topic that's, well, let's be honest, it's on a lot of people's minds, wealth and prosperity.
Hmm.
So, what are some of Murphy's core principles and techniques for attracting abundance?
Well, Murphy believes that wealth, at its core, it's a state of mind, a deep conviction in your own abundance and deservingness, not just the result of, you know, grinding it out, working yourself to the bone. He suggests something that sounds deceptively simple, but he says to try it, just repeat the word wealth to yourself, quietly, for about 5 minutes every night before sleep.
Oh, interesting.
The goal is to really soak your subconscious mind in that concept and feeling of wealth.
Okay.
It's about cultivating what he calls a wealth consciousness.
So, like rewiring your beliefs from the inside out.
Exactly.
Okay. He also shares that story of the young man who kept visualizing a medical diploma.
Oh, yes.
How does that illustrate the law of attraction when it comes to money?
It's a great example. So this guy, he wanted to be a doctor, but he didn't have the means, the money, the opportunity.
Right.
So what did he do?
What did you do?
He'd spend time visualizing that medical diploma, his name on it, all the details, feeling that sense of accomplishment. He lived with that image in his mind, and eventually things just started lining up for him. The opportunities, the resources, the support he needed, it all appeared. It's like holding that mental picture of financial abundance, seeing yourself already there, not just hoping for it someday.
So embody it, feel it as if it's already yours.
Exactly.
He also talks about how, like, negative thinking, those limiting beliefs, can actually get in the way of financial success.
Right time. He says if you're constantly dwelling on thoughts like I'm underpaid or, I'm getting a raw deal, I'm always struggling with money, you're subconsciously creating this sense of scarcity, and that can sabotage your progress.
So you're, like, accidentally attracting more of what you don't want?
Exactly. Your external circumstances will often reflect those deep-seated beliefs about money and your worthiness to have it. It's like self-sabotage fueled by negative programming.
Wow. And what are those 3 steps to achieving success in any area, including finances, according to Murphy?
He lays out 3 key steps. First, you've got to have a clear desire. What do
Yeah.
you truly want? Second, specialize. Become an expert in something.
Okay.
And third, this is crucial, make sure your desire, your expertise, it benefits others in some way. True lasting success often involves an element of service. You're creating something, offering something that improves other people's lives. And that positive energy, it tends to come back to you.
So contributing value to others is part of the equation.
It's a big part.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about success and achievement in a more general sense. What are some techniques Murphy suggests for using the subconscious to reach our goals, whatever they may be?
He shares this fascinating technique from Goethe.
Okay.
Goethe was a big believer in having these vivid imaginary conversations as a way for the subconscious to offer guidance and creative solutions.
Okay.
He'd picture a trusted friend in his mind and engage in a detailed conversation with them, imagining them giving wise advice about whatever challenge he was facing.
So it's like having your own personal wise counsel on call in your head?
Exactly. And Murphy tells a story about a stockbroker who used this technique to great success.
Really?
This stockbroker wanted to make smarter investment choices.
Right.
So he'd regularly have these imaginary conversations with a really successful banker friend, someone he admired.
Okay.
He'd picture the banker congratulating him on his smart, profitable investments.
Interesting.
By repeatedly playing out this mental scene, he ingrained the belief in his ability to make those sound decisions, and eventually it manifested in real life.
So it's almost like mental rehearsal, preparing your subconscious for success.
Precisely. You're creating that feeling of accomplishment before it happens in the real world, and that helps pave the way for it to actually happen.
Okay, that makes sense. He also talks about how students can leverage these principles for better grades.
He does. He talks about a student who drastically improved his grades by consistently affirming his ability to remember things perfectly and by radiating genuine goodwill toward his teachers and classmates.
Interesting.
So positive self-talk focused on his abilities and creating harmonious relationships, those two things together unlocked his potential.
It's like, again, that connection between inner state and outer results. What about selling property? He gives a compelling example there, too.
Yes. He describes a real estate agent who was having a tough time selling this one particular house.
Okay.
So he started affirming, saying to himself with conviction that the perfect buyer, someone who would love the house and thrive in it, would be guided to it, almost as if by destiny.
Okay.
He held that image in his mind, visualizing those happy new owners, trusting his subconscious to make it happen.
Hmm.
And it did.
So setting the intention, visualizing the outcome, and letting the subconscious work its magic. And he mentions a technique that a lot of successful business people use.
He does. He observes that many top executives, business leaders, they have this habit of repeating the word success to themselves throughout the day with deep faith and conviction.
Okay.
They intuitively understand that when you plant that idea of success in your subconscious mind, it sets in motion the elements needed for it to actually happen in the real world. It's like you're immersing yourself in the energy of success until it becomes your dominant belief.
Okay. Now, let's talk about relationships, specifically marriage.
Okay.
What does Murphy say about using the power of the subconscious to create harmony in our marriages?
Well, he's very clear that a truly fulfilling, lasting marriage, it's built on love, honesty, sincerity.
Absolutely.
He offers techniques for attracting the ideal partner by consciously impressing those desired qualities onto your subconscious mind.
Okay.
For instance, if someone's looking for their ideal husband, they might affirm things like, I attract a man who is loving, honest, sincere, and kind, and visualize those specific qualities in their future partner.
So getting clear on what you want and believing it's possible.
Exactly. It's about setting that intention and aligning your subconscious with it.
He also cautions against some common mistakes that can really disrupt marital harmony, right?
He does. He strongly advises against trying to change your partner.
Oh, yeah.
And he warns against airing your dirty laundry, discussing your marital problems with everyone.
Right, right.
That often just magnifies the negativity. Instead, he stresses the importance of focusing on the positive, projecting thoughts of love, peace, and goodwill towards your spouse. He even suggests praying together to deepen the connection.
So it's about nurturing the positive, safeguarding that intimacy. Now let's talk about happiness, something we all strive for. What role does the subconscious play in how we experience joy and contentment?
Murphy is adamant that happiness is a state of mind, not a destination or something we find outside ourselves.
Okay.
It's a habit we choose, and it stems from trusting in the power of our subconscious.
We can't rely on things outside ourselves to make us happy.
Exactly. The true source is internal.
He calls happiness the harvest of a quiet mind. What a beautiful way to put it. What does he mean by that?
He's saying that when we're rooted in peace, when we have emotional balance, a sense of security, and we trust in a higher power or our own inner wisdom, the subconscious naturally produces feelings of joy and contentment.
So inner peace is the foundation.
It's the fertile ground from which happiness grows.
Now, getting along with others, it's a big part of life. What does Murphy suggest for creating harmonious human relations?
Well, he points out something really important. Our thoughts and feelings about others, they're constantly being recorded by our subconscious, and then they're reflected back to us in how those relationships play out.
Interesting.
He tells the story of this woman who had terrible relationships with her coworkers,
Okay.
and she realized she was always thinking negative thoughts about them.
Right, right.
So she decided to change her focus.
What does she do?
She started praying for their well-being, their happiness, and her internal attitude shifted.
Okay.
And as a result, her relationships with them improved drastically.
Wow.
The change had to start with her.
So it's like, again, our inner world shaping our outer experiences.
Exactly. We often see in others what we're projecting.
He also talks about the power of inner speech, what we're saying to ourselves.
He does. He says that negative self-talk, unspoken resentments, those can really hold us back in relationships. He gives the example of a salesman who constantly felt undermined by his boss.
Okay, expert speaker.